Hello, everyone. I know that a lot of people are panicking, but we're not one of them, are we? We trust the Lord to go through it with us, no matter what happens. He is there with us. Even though we go through the valley of the shadow of death, we're not going to fear evil because you are with us, oh Lord. Okay, so hopefully, you get this by this evening. It's Wednesday, or tomorrow morning. And then, if you want, you can do it with us on the very day that I normally would be with you at a Bible study. And I sure do miss you. We're going to be doing this for this week and 3 more weeks afterwards, bringing us up to our usual time of stopping. And there we are at Easter. And so I'm going to be doing it instead of with you. I'm going to do it on YouTube. Now, I did this several years ago when we had ice on our driveway for a couple months. And each week I was able to do the Bible study on YouTube. And now we have YouTube. So the Lord is good to provide. And we're going to start with prayer. Father, we just trust you. We choose today to trust you. There's no one else out there that we can trust, not anyone, but you, oh Lord. And so we do trust you. Father, I thank you for all that you've done for us in the past. Help us as we walk through these hard times right now to just walk trustingly, not dependent on man or our savings account or the stock market or food on the shelves. None of those things. We trust in you, O Lord. In Christ's precious name, amen. Okay, so we're going to do a snippet. And our snippet is from Mark, and it's a sandwich, another sandwich in Mark. And it's Mark 14, 1 to 11. And we're doing these sandwiches because Melchizedek is a sandwich. And I wanted you to get to understand what sandwiches are. And it's snippet time, and it doesn't even have to have anything to do with our Bible study. And that's what we're going to be doing. It says this, Mark 14, 1 to 11. Now the Passover and the unleavened bread, isn't that funny? We're on a sandwich that's made up of bread. Now remember what our sandwich is. It's a slice of bread. The first part of a story is given to us. Then comes the lunch meat. That's another story that intrudes upon that first story. It interrupts it. And the whole story is given in that second story, whereas the first story is interrupted and then completed at the end, the second slice of bread. So that's what we're going to look at right now is this Passover with unleavened bread is the first slice of bread that we're given. Now, what I want you to think about as we're going along is what holds this whole story together, who is being contrasted, how are they being contrasted. Okay, so now the Passover and unleavened bread were 2 days away, and the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to seize him. That is Jesus, by stealth and kill him. For they were saying, not during the festival. What festival? Passover and unleavened bread. Otherwise, there might be a riot of the people. Now comes the lunch meat, an intrusion on this story. While Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper and reclining at the table, there came a woman with an alabaster vial of very costly perfume of pure nard. That's high quality nard, a perfume, and she broke the vial and poured it over his head. But some were indignantly remarking to one another, "Why has this perfume been wasted? For this perfume might have been sold for over 300 denarii, and the money given to the poor." And they were scolding her. But Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why do you bother her? She has done a good deed to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you wish, you can do good to them. But you do not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for the burial. Truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be spoken of in memory of her." Now, that story is complete. And we go back to the original story. Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went away to the chief priests in order to betray him or hand him over. They were glad when they heard this and promised to give him money. And he began seeking how to betray him at the opportune time. Now we're completed that. So we have our sandwich. The first part of the sandwich starts out with the chief priests and scribes who are trying to figure out how they can kill him. But their decision is, let's not do it while the festival is going on, because there are going to be a whole lot of people who know about Jesus, and they might rise up and make a riot against us. In the meantime, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper, and a woman comes in with this expensive alabaster box filled with perfume. Now she's going to make an irrevocable sacrifice. Why do I call it an irrevocable sacrifice? Because when she crushes open the vial and pours out the perfume, there's going to be nothing left to take home with her. She has given all. And then we're told that it's worth a year's worth of wages, 300 denarii. And that's can you imagine a person giving away a bottle of perfume that's worth tens of thousands of dollars, what would be a year's worth of work? For, he says, then people are trying to put her down, finding reasons to put her down because of who she is. And you always, says Jesus, always have the poor with you whenever you wish to do good, and you should do good. You should be freely helping those who are poor. And but what she's done, it says here in verse 8, she has done what she had. Now you're probably saying to yourself, wait a second. That doesn't sound grammatically correct. She has done what she had. We would translate it, and in fact in your Bible it's probably translated, she has done what she could, right? But that would mess up what Mark is alluding to. Because if you remember a couple chapters back, there was the story of the widow. And what she had done, even though it was her last bit of money, she gave all that she had. So how does that sound like this woman? Well, he takes that word had and he uses again here so that Jesus says she has done what she had, reminding us of that story of the widow who had so very little and yet gave what she had. Our woman is a paragon of discipleship, partly because of what she does, but most of all because she's the only one who gets it. The other disciples don't get it, that Jesus has to die, but she does. She has that in her mind. She's the only one to comprehend the mission of the Anointed One, so she anoints him for his burial. The death of Jesus is front and center in her mind, and she's going to do something about it. And then something wonderful is promised by Jesus. Whenever this gospel of Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection is preached in the whole world, this story of this woman will be preached along with it in memory of her. Now, Judas Iscariot didn't have anything to do with the first slice of bread, but the chief priests do. Remember, we're told that the chief priests and scribes were seeking how to seize Jesus by stealth. Well, in the second slice of bread, Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went off to the chief priests. So we're back to the chief priests in order to betray or hand Jesus over to them. And notice that Judas began seeking how to betray him at an opportune time. Remember, the chief priests and scribes were seeking how to seize him. Now Judas is seeking how to betray him. They heard about his. Were glad when they heard this, and they promised him money. Do you remember that the woman spent 300 denarii on this thing, and the people around say this money could be used for the poor. So money has to do with the center story, and the end of our story, money. So he began to seeking how to betray Jesus at an opportune time. Now, this brings us to an extremely important element or question in this story. The first question is, why did the priests change their mind from not during the death festival to an opportune time? Because that's what Judas comes away with. He knows he has to find an opportune time to deliver over Jesus. And that must have been what they agreed upon. But they had thought they're not going to do it during the festival of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But now they've changed their mind. Why did they change their mind? Think about it. Got it? I think this would be an easy one. Because Judas comes and says, look, I can tell you where he goes at night. Because Judas knows that every night he goes to the garden to pray. That's what it says. And so that's what it says about Jesus going to the garden. So he says, I know an opportune time, a time when the riots, the people won't be everywhere, and a time when people would normally be sleeping. And they think, whoa, then we can do it anytime. The second question is, And this is the hard one. Why did Judas change his mind? We know why the chief priests changed their mind. Now, why did Judas change his mind from being a follower to being a betrayer? What happened? What in the story that we just saw happened that he should change his mind? I had to think about this long and hard. And what I concluded was that middle section gives us the answer. Watch what it says in verse 6, 7, and 8. But Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why do you bother her? She has done a good deed to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you wish, you can do good to them. But you do not always have me. She has done what she had. She has anointed my body beforehand for the burial." So what is he saying? He's saying, first, you don't always have me. And then the really crux of it all, she's anointing me for my burial. And then things begin to click in Judas's mind. Now, we wonder why it didn't click before for Judas or the other disciples, because Jesus gives them a prophecy that this is what's going to happen to him 3 times. Open your Bible to Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8. This is the first prophetic announcement of Jesus' death. And it's in Mark chapter 8, verse 31. 8. Oops. These pages usually aren't sticky. Maybe my hands. Have you got it, all of you? Did you read it? Mark 8:31. There we go. Must be my hands. Mark 8:31. And Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he was speaking about it plainly. They should have gotten it, right? Keep your finger there, because I want you to go to the next chapter, 9:31, and he again gives the prophecy in verse 31. For Jesus was teaching his disciples and telling them, the Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and when he has been killed, he will rise 3 days later. Here it is. They still get messed up. They still don't understand. And then in chapter 10, verse 33 to 34, it says this, "Behold," another prophecy, "we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and will hand him over to the Gentiles. They will mock him and spit on him and scourge him and kill him. And 3 days later, he will rise again." Clear? I mean as clear as glass. Clean, clean, clean glass. That the Son of Man is going to die. And they don't get it? Why does Judas get it this time? Well, let's see in chapter 9:31. Remember, we did that one. 9:31, what he says. The Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men. What about that saying is a little unclear and may have definitely been unclear to the disciples? Well, Jesus identifies himself as the Son of Man. But they don't know that. They don't realize that he's saying it's about himself. See, the term Son of Man, it is an idiom for man. So all he's saying is the man will be, let's see what it says. The man is to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. So they're wondering, what man? It was very easy. Of course, he's been calling himself Son of Man for a while, and they didn't connect it. Perhaps because they didn't want it to happen. And 10:31, 33 again. Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests. Again, Son of Man. So in 9:31, 10:31, 8:31, which we didn't cover again, in 8:31, the same thing happens. He calls himself the Son of Man. But in our story, go back to our sandwich, what does he say that makes the light bulb go off or on in Judas's mind? He says in verse 8, she has done what she had. She has anointed my body beforehand for the burial. And in verse 7, right before, but you do not always have me with you. That's when it clicks. That's when Judas leaves. That's when the delusion happened in his mind, in his heart. He now realized that this was not the Messiah he was expecting. He doubted Jesus completely now. How can Jesus die and be the Messiah? See, they had it all wrong. Their Messiah was wrong. Their Messiah was going to conquer the world and set up the Jewish people into a nation. But Messiah had to come to first take care of their sin, because we need to have our sin taken care of first before the kingdom comes. Okay, so we are now on to Melchizedek. Now remember, we've been doing this all along, and so we are going to read through it again to see how this time, the third week, you're grasping more of the situation. Okay, so let's give a little bit of a background. The kings from over the Fertile Crescent come to Canaan, the eastern side of the Jordan River. If you were looking at Israel on a map, it would be the right-hand side. Whereas Abram, he's on the left-hand side, on the western side, where he ought to be. Remember, Lot chooses to go east. That's east of the Jordan River, down in the southeastern part of the Dead Sea. So there are some kings coming, and we know the background. 14 years earlier, these kings had defeated these cities, and they're rebelling now. In the 13th year, after what happened, they decide that they're not going to pay the tribute. And so the following year, the kings of the east want their tribute, so they come. They come over the Fertile Crescent, and they're going over on a road that was called the King's Highway. It was a well-worn road. Kings and soldiers and business people and caravans went on this path. over the Fertile Crescent. And this path, called the King's Highway, came down the eastern side of the Jordan River, to the right of the Jordan River. And so it was well worn. And as they're coming down, they defeat many cities. In fact, it tells us 6 cities. And then the 5 kings of the eastern part of Canaan get together, and they're going to fight against these 4 kings from the east. They should have known better. If those 4 kings from the east could go into 6 cities and defeat those cities and take the plunder, they're definitely going to be able to defeat these 5 kings. So we have the kings of the eastern part of the Fertile Crescent coming, and that's where we start. Now it was in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, that's Babylon, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, or cheddar cheese, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, prepared for battle against. So it's from the point of view of the kings of the east. They're going to come against these 5 kings from the southeastern part of the Dead Sea. Barak, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea, or the Dead Sea, we would call it. Then we read, in the middle is about what happened in the past and what happened as the kings came around the Fertile Crescent. And so it tells us that story. So that's before when the kings of the east fight against the kings of Canaan. So let's read it. For 12 years they had been, that is, the Canaanite kings, had been subservient to Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they had revolted. But then in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him. They struck the Rephaites in Eshta. Let's just say 6 cities, and defeated those 6 kings. Got it? Rather than me go through that again. Now, all those cities were along the King's Highway. And so as they're coming to the rebels, they're defeating city after city after city along the path of the King's Highway. Then we get told this story, again, the beginning story, only from the point of view of the kings of Canaan. Then went out the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is now Zoar. They sent their ranks against the kings from the Fertile Crescent in the valley of Siddim, against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. So Chedorlaomer is number 1, and he leads them because we saw his name in the middle 2 times. For 12 years they had been subservient to Chedorlaomer. And then in verse 5, but then in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer, and he's number 1 in this retelling. And then it tells us 4 kings against 5. And what we realized last week is that we have a spoiler alert by our author. He tells us who the winner is before he relates the story in the next section. He tells us that it's the kings of Canaan. And how do we say he tells us? Well, the names of the king of these 5 cities are left out. And what does that mean? They're not the winners. They've lost their names. They've lost the battles. And then it tells us 4 kings against 5. So the 5 are the Canaanite kings. Who are the 4 kings? The Fertile Crescent kings. But they're named first here. The 4 kings against 5. I think that this is another spoiler alert, because it tells us first the names of the kings that won. The 4 kings against 5. Okay, now we learned also last week that this is not in chronological order, is it? It's in creative order. So it's made to be a chiasm, isn't it? And what happens first, historically and in chronological order? Well, X. X in the middle is what happens first. And then what happens second? Well, A to D happens second. What happens next? Well, what if the middle is the first thing that happens, and the top part is the second thing that happens? What is this bottom part? Don't say third. Because when did it happen? It's happening at the same time as the top. See, it's the same incident told twice from 2 different points of view, emphasizing that middle part, isn't it? So if you want to number it, the middle part is 1, the top part is 2, the bottom part is 2, because they are both identical times, only from different points of view. Isn't that neat? How he does that. That's what a chiasm does sometimes. Chiasm can be as different as handprints. Each one is different. Okay. So then let's go on to the next part of the story. We have, okay, since we've already been told in cryptic form who won, the author proceeds to talk about who lost. Now we know the 4 kings won. We knew it because of the hints. Now we're going to be told what happened to the 5 kings that lost. And it tells us that in verses 10 to 12. So let's do it. Now the valley of Siddim is pit after pit of bitumen. What's bitumen? Tar? Yeah, tar. Or petroleum. And when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they flung themselves in it, while those who remained fled to the hill country. Oh. So the kings just take the best, and the people, they have to flee to the hills. Now they took, who's the they? The kings of the Fertile Crescent, all the property of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their food, and went away. And they took all the property, and they took Lot and all his property, the son of Abram's brother, and went away, for he had settled in Sodom. He's no longer on the outside in his tent. He's settled in Sodom. So now, there's a way that the author shows us to make this a separate paragraph from the first section and from the following section. And that's by an inclusio, or bookends. Now, this is neat. because in the Hebrew, the original Hebrew, there are no vowels. So it says, now in the valley of Siddim, that's where the battle went. Remember in the first page it told us that the battle was in the valley of Siddim. Well, Siddim, therefore, would be S-D-D-M in Hebrew, without the vowels. So S-D-D-M. That's where it starts out. Got that? Now look at the end in verse 12. For he had settled in Sodom, but there wouldn't be any vowels. So what differentiates this S-D-M from Siddim at the top? Well, if you remember how I spelled it, Siddim is S-D-D-M, and Sodom is S-D-M. No doubling of the D's. So they sound alike. They almost look alike. Because when Hebrew wants to double a letter, they put a dot in the midst of the one letter, and it tells you to double it. So Siddim has a D and a dot in that D to tell you to double that D. But Sodom does not have a dot in the D for Sodom. So we have Siddim at the beginning, Sodom at the end, and that forms our inclusio, telling us this is a paragraph in and of itself. Got that? Now, it's at this time in this paragraph between Siddim and Sodom that we find out why we were given the story in chapter 13. Remember last week and the week before, we went over chapter 13 that began and ended with the worship of Abram. It's in between there that Lot is given property by Abram, an offer of property by Abram, who was told by God that it was all his. And then he says to Lot, take the north or the south. And do you remember what Lot took? He took the east. Not a good place to go, is it? We're finding out why. Okay, so chapter 13 is important because Lot goes to the east, and where does he end up? In Sodom. That's why he's taken. And that is why Abram gets involved, because his brother's son is in Sodom and now is taken captive by the enemy, the four kings of the Fertile Crescent, who are strong and brave and true, right? And we know they're strong because it tells us in the middle section of the first page, there in the middle of the chiasm, that they defeated it one city after the other, 6 cities coming down, right? And we know that they're formidable, don't we? Yet we know something else. And that is that God is more formidable than they are. We may look at what's going on today and see we're could be fearful, couldn't we? Because of the enemy. But we don't have to be afraid. The Lord our God is with us no matter what happens. No matter what happens. Our promise is that he's with us and that he can defeat any enemy. Okay, so that section's over. That paragraph tells us what happened in the aftermath. The kings They run and fling themselves into tar pits, and soldiers are in the hills hiding. Uh, and then about the townspeople, that's up for grabs, isn't it? Because all the soldiers have left. And what's going to happen? Well, the kings from the Fertile Crescent are going to be able to take away all the people and all the property in Sodom and Gomorrah and the other towns, aren't they? And take away Lot. So the next section is one whole section. I know it's going to talk about Abraham and the battle, and then Melchizedek, and then the king of Sodom, and all that. But it's one whole segment. How do I know? Well, we have another set of bookends. Look at verse 13. One who escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew. He was dwelling by the oaks of Mamre, circle Mamre, would you? The Amorite, brother of Eshcol, circle the word Eshcol, and brother of Aner, circle the name Aner. Now let's look at the bottom, not 15:1, because that's the next chapter, but in verse 24. Nothing for me, says Abram to the king of Sodom, only what the lads have consumed, and the share of the men who went with me. Who were the men who went with them? Aner, Eshcol, Mamre. Where'd you hear those names? Right at the top of our segment. What has the author done? He's created an inclusio. But what else has he done? If you circle those names again, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, here in verse 24, and compare them to Mamre, Eshcol, and Aner at the top, what has he done? He's reversed the names, hasn't he? So that we have a mirror image at the beginning and at the end of these names. Sure sign that he is showing us we have bookends. So let's read. Give me a second. Take a drink of water. Okay. Verse 13. One who escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew. He was dwelling by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner. In chapter 13, we thought that was a place, the Oaks of Mamre, and it is a place, but it's owned by Mamre. It's not only called the Oaks of Mamre, it's called the Oaks of Mamre because it's owned by Mamre. Brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, they were Abram's covenant allies. When Abram heard that his brother had been taken prisoner, now it was his brother's son, but in Hebrew thinking, the familial lines are liquid. So your brother's son can be called your brother. Your great-grandson could be called your son. This goes on all the time in Hebrew because family was important. The family ties were much tighter than our family ties today. I barely know anything about my great-great-grandmother, but they knew everything about their great-great-parents. I know one thing because my great-grandmother told my mother that her mother's name was Barbara. And that impressed my mother so much that she said, I'm going to name my daughter Barbara also. And there's my name, Barbara. Okay, so it's just different, isn't it, today than it was then. When Abram heard that his brother had been taken prisoner, he drew out his retainers, his house-born slaves, 18 and 300, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. That's in the far north of Israel. He split up his forces against them in the night, he and his servants, and struck them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is in the north of Damascus. That's even further northeast. But Abram retrieved all the property, and he also retrieved his brother Lot and his property, and also the women and the other people. Next thing that happens, the king of Sodom went out to meet him upon his return from the strike against Chedorlaomer and against the kings. Now, let's stop right there. The king of Sodom is not given a name. Do you remember that at the bottom part of our chiasm on the previous page? He's still not given a name. But Chedorlaomer still has his name because he's the winner. Okay, the strike against Chedorlaomer and against the kings that were with him to the valley of Shavah, that is the King's Valley. And that makes me stop right there, the King's Valley. Have you noticed that throughout this story and continuing on down, the word king is mentioned over and over again? And remember what we say about repeated words. We say that they are important. And if you were to count all the words, all the times the word king is mentioned, you would count up to, I'm not going to tell you, not yet. If you want to count them, circle them and count them and put it on pause and come back with the answer. I'd really like that. So why don't you do that right now? Pause. Okay, so do you have your number? If it's the number 28, you're right. And so we have 28 times the word king. Now you know 28 is a multiple of 7, right? Okay. Oh, it's not. But 7 plays another part in this. As we read through this sandwich, from verse 17 to the end, I want you to put a number before each time king is used. Okay? So, the king of Sodom went out to meet him upon his return from the strike against Chedorlaomer and against the kings that were with him to the valley of Shavah, that is the King's Valley. Now Melchizedek, stop right there. I wanted to tell you what Melchizedek means because we're given his whole name as well as the fact that he's a king. Melch. In the Hebrew, Melch means king. So what are you going to do with that? You're going to circle it. And that may be why you probably only circled 27 kings, right? And you're saying to yourself, wait a second. I only counted 27. Well, I held back from you because Melch is one of those 28 kings. And now it's one to be you're to put a number in front of it, and it's the number 4. Melchizedek, which means king of righteousness, which the author of Hebrews is going to bring out. King of Shalem, or Salem, or Jerusalem. So we had another king. That was 5 kings. King of Salem. And brought out bread and wine, for he was priest of God Most High, and gave Abram blessing, and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, founder or maker or possessor or creator. All those words make up what that Hebrew word means. So it really means creator, and that's what most Bibles translate it to be. Creator of heaven and earth. And blessed by God Most High, who has delivered your oppressors into your hand. And he, or Abram, gave him, Melchizedek, a tenth of everything. I'll stop right now. It says he gave him a tenth. And somebody asked, well, how do you know it's Abram? I know it's Abram because who gets the tenth all the time? It's always the priest. And who's the priest here? Melchizedek, priest of God Most High. So he would get the tithe. So now we know. And the writer of Hebrews knows this. And that's why he says, Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of everything. Now, the first part, verse 17, was the first part of our sandwich. It starts out with the king of Sodom coming to Abram, but there's an intrusion. Before he quite makes it to Abram's camp, somebody else gets there first, and it's Melchizedek. So his part is the lunch meat. And you know that the lunch meat is the most important part of a sandwich. And of course it's the most important part in this sandwich because Melchizedek blesses Abram and Abram gives him the tithe. Now we're back to the original story, and that's in verse 21. The king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons and the property. You did number that word king, right? The king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons and the property, take for yourself. Abram said to the king of Sodom, I raise my hand in the presence of Yahweh, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. Where did he get all that information? From Melchizedek. Right. Creator of heaven and earth, if from a thread to a sandal strap, if I should take from anything that is yours, so that you should not say, I made Abram rich, nothing for me, only what the lads have consumed, what they ate along the way, and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Escrol, Mamre, let them take their share. And that's the end of the story till the next chapter, and we'll get to that next week. We have a sandwich in which Melchizedek is the most important one. How many kings did you come up with? 7. 7 times. And we know since the very beginning of Genesis, and this is only chapter 14, that 7 has been the important number. And all these kings are important. But there's another thing going on. Do you remember at the very bottom of your page where we had the chiasm concerning the battle? What did it say at the very bottom? 4 kings against 5. So therefore, what does that make Melchizedek? The 10th king. And that's going to play a part, an important part of next week's discussion. So until then, goodbye, God bless you, and choose to trust God today. I love you. Bye-bye.